What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Flying with Garrett. Today I'm going to talk about life as an airline pilot on reserve. And as you can tell, I'm at home, so I really don't need to be wearing this. So I can actually be nice and comfortable in my own home. So what does that mean, me being a reserve pilot? Well, I'm on call. Scheduling can call me at any time during my reserve availability period. Our RAP is what we call it in the airline industry. So I'm on call today from 0500 to 1900, so 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Scheduling can call me at any point during that period and gives me 90 minutes at the bare minimum to get to the gate. That means I have to change, get ready, drive to the airport, go through security, and be at the gate ready to go 90 minutes from now. Well, thankfully for me, I live 15 minutes from the airport, so life is pretty dang good being on reserve in my situation. Now, at many different airlines, there's different types of reserve. You have short call reserve, long call reserve, and hot reserve. So just to go quickly through some of those, of course, my airline just has a blanket 90-minute call out. So hot reserve for a lot of airlines is you have to be at the airport and essentially at the gate in 15 minutes or less. So you're stuck at the airport all day long, especially if they don't call you and use you. It gets kind of boring. So short call reserve is something kind of like what I'm on, the 90-minute call out. And then some companies have things called long call reserve. Long call reserve can be nice, especially if you don't live in base. So long call reserve, depending on the airline, can be anywhere from 12 to 14 plus hours of call out. So you could be sitting at home. Let's say I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm based in JFK, so John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. So they could call me right now, and I have 12 to 14, 16 hours, whatever the airline's long call reserve could be. I have that amount of time to get to the airport here in Charlotte and commute up to New York, which it tends to work out just fine for a lot of people who live out of base with just one quick kind of flight. So I kind of have the best of both worlds. I live in base, which is huge, especially if you are on reserve. I live in base, so I can basically do whatever I want while being at home, which is very, very nice. You can even sleep in, as long as you have your phone on loud and you're not an extremely deep sleeper. Let's say I wanted to sleep in until 8 a.m., and I went on call at 5 a.m. A lot of people do that, if they live in base and close to the airport, they can sleep in. You don't have to be up at 5 a.m. and just sitting there all day, like waiting for scheduling to call you. And they might not even call you all day. So today I'm actually on reserve. It is 12:30 right now, and I haven't got called. I got up at 6 a.m. I went to the gym, which is really nice, instead of being on hot reserve, or maybe I have to commute to sit on reserve. There's people that flew in today, other captains that are sitting here in Charlotte that flew in today that are sitting in an airport or sitting at a hotel that they might have had to get. So it's cool. I got to sleep in a little bit. I got to go to the gym. I got to eat at my house, and I, get to do whatever I want around the house, which is really nice. That's a huge, huge benefit of living in base, and I believe I've covered that in numerous videos before. But living in base makes your life so much easier. Being a commuter versus a home-based pilot, life is way better. So, and that's one thing that I've mentioned in videos before is when you are looking for airlines to work for, definitely consider their bases. Do you want to commute? Do you maybe want to move to one of their bases? And especially if you have families or stuff, a lot of variables get thrown into play, schools and such. So for me, picking my airline was pretty easy, and life's been pretty good. So, basically, I've just been able to stay at home, do whatever I want. I have a bag packed. As you saw in the beginning of the video, I have my uniform ready to go. And I'm on reserve for the next 4 days. So today and 3 days after, they could call me right now and assign me a 4-day trip over the 4 days of reserve. So, or they could just give me an out and back. I could go Charlotte to Milwaukee and back, and then I'm back home tonight. So there's definitely pros and cons of being on reserve. The only bad thing about being on reserve is I can't go too far from my house, because I do have that 90-minute window that they could call me. But thankfully, I've only been called once where I have to be at the airport in 90 minutes. Other than that, let's say they have a trip for me, at 3 p.m. today, but I went on call at 5 a.m. A lot of times they'll call you at 5 a.m. and say, hey, we found a 2-day trip for you and your report time is 3 p.m. So that's nice. You kind of have the day to get everything taken care of that you want to around the house. So a lot of you might ask, why am I on reserve, or why would you want to be on reserve versus a line holder? And a line holder is essentially just bidding for a line each month that has assigned flying, trips already there, and you don't sit at reserve and kind of twiddle your thumbs all day, whether it's at home or the airport or a hotel. Some people, as a first officer, when I was a first officer, my seniority was pretty good at base. I could get really good lines, and with the most amount of days off, I could pick my overnights for the most part, and it was good. But once I upgraded to captain, I went down to the bottom of the seniority list for captains here in Charlotte. So I haven't been able to hold a line. Every now and then I'll be able to hold a build-up line, which is a mix of some line flying as well as reserve days. So this month I was assigned a full reserve schedule, which only gave me 11 days off, but thankfully I haven't been used every day. So those 11 days off add up to, if I only got called 3 days less, now it's 14 days off that I had at home. And of those reserve days, I might be home that night. So a lot of the times being on reserve, at least in base in my situation, you do get to spend more time at home. But as you get more seniority and time goes on and you move up that list, you might be able to bid for 15, 16 day off lines where you get to spend more time at home and not, like I said, twiddle your thumbs and kind of just have to be on edge all the time. Every time my phone rings, I'm like, oh, scheduling. So that's the only thing, the biggest difference between being a line holder and being a reserve pilot. Now, some of you might question, I know pilots can only fly X amount of hours a day. And that all depends on the amount of flights that I am assigned that day or when I'm called, so on and so forth. So I go on at 5 a.m., which is about the earliest you can go on call. That really limits you. I can be available for essentially 16 hours. So if I was assigned at 5 a.m., I could fly 16 hours later that day. So what would that be? 9 p.m. is when I would time out that day. Now, scheduling can always call me today and adjust my on-call tomorrow. They could say, all right, we're going to give you a 0900 to a 2300 on-call period. And that way, that just gives me the more leeway of, maybe splitting reserve pilots up. Some will be on at 5 a.m., some will be on at 7 a.m., some will be on at 9 a.m. That way, not everyone times out at 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. depending on when you're called and such. So that's stuff that scheduling really breaks apart. And sometimes that's good depending on if you're a commuter. Maybe you want to get done earlier, so the 5 a.m. slot is a lot better for you. That way you can be done at 7 p.m. and maybe catch an 8 o'clock flight home that night at the end of your reserve. Now, something that almost every airline has on reserve is called first out or last out. So let's say there's 10 people on reserve today. I can call them up and say, hey, I would like to be last out today. And that means that scheduling will call the 9 other people before me and assign them duty before calling me. And that's all based on seniority as well. So if there's 3 of us that call last out and I'm the most senior of them, they will mark me as very last out. Now, there's some people that are just eager to fly. Maybe they are commuters and they're sitting at the airport all day, or they're sitting at their hotel room all day and they're just bored out of their mind. They really want to fly. They can call scheduling and say, hey, I would like to be assigned first out, so please call me if anything comes up. There's a few downfalls about being a commuter and being on reserve. It really reduces your time from at home. So let's say today's Monday and I went on call at 5 a.m. Well, there's no flights that are ever going to get to Charlotte before 5 a.m. for them to be legal for reserve period today. So they would have had to have commuted in on Sunday night. So that's one less night at home. Also, on the back side of it, let's say they get done at 7 p.m. on day 4 or whatever of their reserve period, then there might not be a flight after that. So they might have to stay on the back side of their reserve slots as well. So it can be really tough being on reserve and a commuting pilot. So I basically just wanted to make this video because I see, just all throughout YouTube and just social media in general, how in forums and stuff, how people really talk down about being on reserve. There's definitely pros and cons about it, but if you live in base and you live close to the airport, life can be pretty good. I know, of course, I like to go flying sometimes, and I also like to spend time at home. So there's good and bad about being on reserve, but for the most part, it's been pretty good for me. I should be able to hold the line pretty soon. Definitely the fourth quarter this year, going into fall. I should be a line holder by that time. If you guys did enjoy this quick little video about just kind of giving more insight about being an airline pilot and what life is like, definitely smash that thumbs up button and let me know more suggestions for next video in the comments below. It is Monday. I go on vacation starting on Friday, and I can't wait. If you're new here, definitely subscribe. I have some super sick travel vlogs coming. Like I mentioned in my last video, I'm going to Tokyo, then I'm going to the Philippines, and I might have just added another really special spot in there as well. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys soon.